Welcome everybody to my limited set review of Throne of Eldraine. This is part 2, the blue cards. I'm going to go through every single blue card. Thanks for watching part 1, which were all the white cards. And we're going in Wooburg order, so the next one will be black. So again, I'm going to use the limited resources rating system where A is the best cards in the set and F are the unplayable stuff in the set. So how about we get started. So the first card is Animating Fairy. The creature half is 2 and a blue for a creature fairy. It's an uncommon, it's flying, and it's a 2/2. And then the sorcery half is Bring to Life, 2 and a blue, sorcery adventure. Target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. So this is the first time we're looking at an adventure in this video, so I'd like to go over that a little bit. Basically, you can cast the sorcery half, or if it's an instant, the instant half, and then once it resolves, or if it resolves, you put it into exile, and then later, when you have the mana and the timing to do it, you can play the creature half. So in this case, you get a 4/4 artifact, and then you can get your 2/2 flyer. So I think together this is a really good card. If you happen to have an artifact out, you just get a free 4/4. Well, not free, but a 4/4 for 3, which is really good stats, especially in limited. So I really like that half of the card. And then the other half is a 2/2 flyer for 3, which is literally a Windrake. So this card is just Windrake with upside. 2 pretty good cards stapled together. This is an all-around slam dunk. It goes really well in that white-blue artifact deck, and there's a couple of cheap artifacts in the set in blue and just regular artifacts that are playable that would make this good. So hopefully you can get the 4/4, but if not, the field case is a 2/2 flyer for 3, which is still decent. Yeah, so I think, I don't know if I'd first pick this, but this is definitely better on the playable scale of stuff, so I think I would give this a C+. Next, let's go over to Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower is 1 and 2 blue for the creature half is a fairy rogue at mythic rare, flash, flying. Brazen Borrower can block only creatures with flying, and it's a 3/1. Excuse me. And then the sorcerer, or the instant half, I should say, the adventure half is Petty Theft, 1 and a blue, instant adventure. Return target non-land permanent and opponent controls to its owner's hand. So this card is funny because, like, I want to know why this is a mythic. It does not feel like a mythic to me. What's funny is the instant half is a bounce spell, and I think bounce is at its worst in this set. Bounce is like worse in this set than it has been in a while, because you don't want to be bouncing their adventure cards and creatures on the battlefield. Like, your opponent could have a creature on the battlefield that they want to use the instant or sorcery again, but it's on the battlefield, so they can't use it. Well, there you go. This gives it back to them so that they can get all the value they want. Plus, this is only bounces only in a non-land permanent and opponent controls, so you can't even bounce your own things with adventure. It just kind of sucks. But then again, it is sort of removable for 2, and then the 3/1 body with flying and flash, I guess, is serviceable. Can only block creatures with flying. For some reason, they decided to give this a drawback, so I don't know. I do know. This card is not... Okay, this is a playable card, but I want more from my mythic, really. So this card I would give a... Yeah, I don't even know if I'd first pick it, because it's just not great. So I'm giving this card a C+. Yeah, because you do get a decent spell, and then it curves into itself from 2 to 3, and you get a creature. So yeah, I'd say C+ for Brazen Borrower. Kind of letdown in my perspective, but well. Now let's go to Charmed Sleep, which is 1 and 2 blue for an enchantment aura at common. It's an enchant creature. It says when Charmed Sleep enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So this card is exactly Water Knot from, I think that was Guilds of Ravnica, I'm not sure. But this is just a premium blue removal. This is kind of the best blue removal you can get. So yeah, this is really good. I would first pick this in usually a weaker pack, but if your uncommons are bad and your rare is bad, you could do worse than this card for sure. So yeah, this one I think I would give between B- and B, I think I'd give it a B-. So definitely first pickable, not too unhappy about that. Alright, next up we got Corridor Monitor for 1 in a blue. It's an artifact creature construct at common. It's a 1/4. When Corridor Monitor enters the battlefield, untap target artifact or creature you control. So it blocks everything, like literally everything. And it untaps an artifact when that matters, or a creature when that matters. So you can like attack with your beater and then untap it to have it on defense, which is not bad. Plus this is an artifact, a cheap artifact at that, for your blue decks that care about artifacts. So that's pretty good. What else can you say about this? It's just pretty serviceable, and you get that 4th toughness, which it dodges that 3 damage red removal spell for 2, which is pretty good. So they'll have a fun time wasting removal on this while your other guys can, just so that they can get through. And then so your other guys are not really protected from removal, but this is a valid target for them. So I think this is decent. I'd give it probably a C. You don't want to jam a million of these in your deck, but if you're running heavy artifacts, you could do worse. And it is 2 mana for a 1/4, which is, pretty good defensive stats. So yeah. So next is pretty cool card. Didn't say please. I just love that. I'm sorry. Okay, so it's 1 and 2 blue for an instant. Counter target spell. Its controller puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. So this is a fairy twist on Thought Collapse. I think it was from Guilds of Ravnica, which is exactly this card. They mill 3 and you counter their spell for 3. Pretty good. And limited counter spells are okay. You don't want to have too many, but if you're going for a more controlling build, you do want as many of these as you can. Not as many as you can. Probably like no more than 2 of these in your deck. Plus, if you're trying to mill them, I mean, you mill 3, so there you go. I just love the flavor of this card. Didn't say please. It's just such a spot-on, like, fairy mischief type card. So I just love that, and the art is cool. I just like this card a lot. I mean, it's a 3 mana counter spell. There's another one in the set that's probably better, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. So counter spells you can't really rate too highly because you're trying to be proactive and limited. So with this one, I'd probably give a C-, although I do really like this card. So the next one is, C- for didn't say please. Next one is Emery, Lurker of the Loch. It's 2 and a blue for a legendary creature, Merfolk Wizard at rare. It's a 1/2. It says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. When Emery, Lurker of the Loch enters the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. And then it says tap, choose target artifact card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. And then the reminder text says you still pay its cost. Timing rules still apply. So just because you tap this on your opponent's turn doesn't mean you can just cast any artifact in your graveyard on their turn. You have to wait until your turn. So I would not tap this during their turn. So it mills you for 4. It's essentially, I mean, I'm assuming you want to put this only in a limited deck with a bunch of artifacts. and I would not play this otherwise because it's just not good otherwise. Yeah, so it costs up to 2 less. So for a blue at the ceiling, you get a 1/2, which is, 1/2 for 1, pretty good as far as the vanilla test goes. And then you mill yourself for 4, which some cards might care about the graveyard, so I mean, there's that for that. And then you can play something from your graveyard. So there's a few artifacts that sack themselves, non-token artifacts that sack themselves, like the Witching Well, which I think is the very last card in this video, which like you pay 4 and then you draw 2 cards once you sack it. And then so you can get that back, play it again, draw 2 more cards. And it's a free activation, it doesn't cost anything except to tap. So that's not bad. But as far as most limited decks, this just doesn't do enough. I mean, it's a 1/2, and then how many good artifacts are there besides like the legendary artifacts, So if you have a legendary artifact and this could be pretty good. And if it's somehow destroyed, you can get it back, which is awesome. But yeah, this card, I like it, but not really for limited. So I think I'd probably give this like a D+, honestly. Yeah, D+ for Emery. Sorry. Okay, the next one is Fae of Wishes. 1 and a blue for an adventure card. The creature half is a fairy wizard at rare. The whole thing is rare. Flying. 1 and a blue, discard 2 cards. Return Fae of Wishes to its owner's hand. It's a 1/4. And then the sorcery half is called Granted. 3 and a blue, sorcery adventure. You may choose a non-creature card you own from outside the game, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So this is a wish card that once you play the creature, you can get back to your hand. So you can just keep wishing for stuff. I mean, that takes a lot of mana, but I mean, it is a self-contained combo, which is pretty good. But in limited, you kind of want all your best cards in your deck that you can cast. So like you're not going to tutor for a green card if you're not playing green, because you can't cast it. So you're gonna only want to play blue cards, but you want to play your best blue cards anyway. And you can only get non-creature cards. So in limited, we all know that creatures are king. So you really want to be getting creatures. But still, maybe you have a counter spell in your sideboard, or I don't know, maybe you want to leave your awesome legendary artifact mythic in your sideboard for some reason, that like the magic mirror or whatever, which I think is pretty good. So Granted is not that useful in limited. As far as the creature goes, it's a 1/4 for 2 flyer, which blocks everything, especially everything in the air, for 2 mana. I mean, that's a pretty good rate. I think I might even just play that for the creature half. So if we're kind of discounting the sorcery half of this card, 1/4 for 2, not bad. With flying, not bad. So I think this card is just straight up C+. And then if you can get stuff out of your sideboard, that's just a plus. So yeah, I think C+ for Fae of Wishes. Next we have Fairy Vandal, 1 and a blue for a 1/2. Fairy Rogue, uncommon, has flash, has flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a 1/1 counter on Fairy Vandal. Now, there's a sub-theme in this set where blue and red want you to draw a second card every turn. And this is a pretty good payoff for that, because start out with a 1/2, then it's a 2/3, then it's a 3/4. It just grows and grows. And it's a pretty good payoff for that. Plus, you want to just draw extra cards anyway. Who doesn't want to do that? And if you can draw 2 cards on your opponent's turn, you can even flash this in as a blocker, draw 2 cards, make it a 2/3, and then it's a really good creature. So this is a really good card. Don't know if I'd first pick it, but it's really solid. I think I'd give it a C+, but it's almost a B-. Eh, uh, yeah, I think C plus for this one for sure. Just a good card. Next we have Folio of Fancies, 1 and a blue for an artifact at rare. Blue has like a lot of rare card draw artifacts in the set. Kind of interesting. So it's a rare artifact. Players have no maximum hand size, so your opponent gets no maximum hand size too, not just you. XX tap, each player draws X cards. Okay. 2 and a blue tap. Each opponent puts a number of cards equal to the number of cards in their hand from the top of their library into their graveyard. So the idea is you fill up their hand. They have no maximum hand size, so hopefully they have like 20 cards in their hand, and then you mill them for 20 or whatever. That's kind of the hope. So I don't like giving my opponent cards. Like, I love drawing cards. I wish this just said you draw cards, but hey, you can pay 4 mana, have you and your opponent draw 2 cards. Then your opponent has a mana advantage on you, and that's kind of bad. But if you can activate this on your opponent's turn, so you can like pay 2, you both draw a card during their end step, then you get access to the card, which is probably what's going to happen like 90% of the time. And then you can mill them. So that's, mill is a legitimate strategy in limited. There's only 40 cards in your deck, so it's happened. People do die to mill occasionally, which I've done. I've died to self mill with Moldervine Reclamation before, which was hilarious. I was like, I'm gonna win. I drew 1,000,000 cards, but then I died. But it was still awesome because I love drawing cards. So this is definitely like a Johnny card. It's pretty bad actually. Like you don't want to be giving your opponent cards for 2 mana a pop. Like no, there's better ways of drawing cards. But it also does work with that draw 2 extra card or draw second card each turn payoffs. So there's that. If you're deep into that deck, I guess you can play this and be fairly happy about it. But I think this is like a D. Like you do not want to put this in your deck. So D for Folio of Fancies. Next up we got Frogify, 1 and a blue for an enchantment aura at uncommon. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a blue frog creature with base power and toughness 1/1. So it says it loses all other card types and creature types. So this is some decent removal in blue. This is like the best thing that blue gets is to transmogrify or whatever you call it. Transform their creatures into worse creatures. So they lose all abilities and they're a 1/1 frog. So essentially you're removing it. This was like the same exact card as Kasmina's Transmutation in War of the Spark. And that card was awful, except it's like the only way of dealing with the God Eternals. And this one I think is going to be a little better because there's no zombie armies running around. This one making stuff lose its abilities is pretty good, and a 1/1 makes it pretty just irrelevant. So I think this is pretty good. Kasmina's Transmutation was so bad in War of the Spark though, but I'm hoping that it's better in this set. So I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to give it a C+. I mean, it's an uncommon, which gives a hint that it can be a little better in this set. So hopefully, let's hope. So what did I say? I said, yeah, I'll say C+ for that. Next up, we have Gadwick the Wizened, X blue for a legendary creature, human wizard. It's a rare, and it's a 3/3. And it says when Gadwick the Wizened enters the battlefield, draw X cards. Whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. So this card is a bomb. In limited, all you want to do is draw cards and out-card advantage your opponent, which this card really helps. You do got to be heavy blue because it costs 3 blue pips, which shouldn't really be a problem by the time you want to cast this. So let's go through it. So at base level, it's a 3 mana 3/3 with upside. Then it's a 4 mana 3/3, which draws you a card, which is still playable. At 5 mana, draws you 2 cards, still a 3/3. I mean, it at no point is this bad. Like, it's this is just really good. And you draw the cards, not like the folio where you're both drawing cards. So I really like Gadwick. There's a kind of a funny rules interaction where this didn't originally work, where you would draw the cards, because if you pay X, then it enters the battlefield, then it says draw X cards. So there was like a timing thing with that, but they're fixing that so that it does work. Also, the other text, whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Non-land permanent can tap their artifacts or whatever. But you're going to probably want to get creatures, of course. Yeah, that's just a really strong ability. I think with this card you want to be heavy blue just because you want to play as many blue spells as possible. Hopefully blue instants. So every blue spell you have has a rider that says tap, target non-land permanent, and opponent controls, which is just excellent. So this card like just shuts down their deck single-handedly. So this card is like an A. One of the best cards in the set, and I would be super stoked to unwrap that in a draft. Pack one, pick one. So A for Gadwick. Next up, we got Hypnotic Sprite. It's an adventure card, 2 blue, or the creature half is 2 blue for a fairy at uncommon. It's got flying and it's a 2/1. But the instant half of this, the adventure half, is Mesmeric Glare, 2 and a blue, instant adventure. Counter target spell with converted mana cost 3 or less. So you'll never get a mana advantage with the instant half because you're always paying 3 and you're getting something with CMC 3 or less, which in limited not wonderful. If you're on the draw, when you have 3 mana, they're gonna have 4 mana. So they're going to be playing their 4-drop, and you can only counter stuff with CMC 3 or less, which really sucks. But this can hit any spell with CMC 3 or less, so creatures, non-creature spells, stuff like that, anything it can counter. But the body is okay. It's 2 mana for a 2/1. That's not bad. And I really like the art on this card, and the showcase art is really cool too. But yeah, it's a counter spell and limited, which they're not great because you don't want to be that reactive. But yeah, I mean, it's playable definitely. So I'm gonna give this a C. C for Hypnotic Sprite. Yep. Next up, we got Into the Story. It's 5 and 2 blue for an instant. Oh, it's an instant. Wow, first time I read this, I thought it was a sorcery. So it's an instant. Uncommon. This spell costs 3 less to cast if an opponent has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. Draw 4 cards. 4 cards. 4 cards for, what is that? So 5 minus 3 is, help me out here, 2. So for 4 mana you can draw 4 cards, which is phenomenal. And by the time you can cast this, hopefully it's 4 mana by then. But if you still have to pay 7 mana for 4 cards, that's not the end of the world. So I guess with the mill deck, I mean, this is a pretty good mill payoff. You draw 4 cards. It's amazing. This is going to refill your hand, definitely win you the game. Pretty cool art, too. I like that. Yeah, drawing cards unlimited, super good. And you can do 4 cards for 4 mana, which is even better than, like, Opportunity, which I think is 6 mana draw 4. Or tight. There's a million. But draw 4 cards, no drawback, all upside. Great card. I think I don't like first picking this, but I'd definitely say it's a C+. You definitely want one of these in your blue decks. Just probably just one. But I'd say C+. for Into the Story. Next up, we got the Magic Mirror, which is 6 blue for a legendary artifact at Mythic Rare. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a knowledge counter on the Magic Mirror, then draw a card for each knowledge counter on the Magic Mirror. So you need to be playing a lot of instant and sorceries to play this card, because 9 mana to do nothing the turn you play it is awful. So you need to hopefully get this down to like, man, I would want to only pay 3 for that. You want to have like 6 instants in sorceries in your graveyard. But the upside of this card is exact reprint of Mind Unbound, which is, you know, put a knowledge counter, draw a card at the beginning of your upkeep for each knowledge counter, and then add a counter, then draw whatever. So yeah, drawing cards is amazing, but in limited, like drawing 1 card, then drawing 2 cards, then drawing 3 cards, it can really get out of hand. Plus you have no maximum hand size, so that can be really good. I guess the Brazen Borrower really shuts this down because it just bounces it to your hand. So I guess that's, 1 blue mythic sticking it to the other one. But yeah, in limited, if you can stick this, it's really good. Hopefully you don't mill yourself out, but hopefully you're just gonna win by the time you do mill yourself out. So there's that. I mean, I can't see this going past like 6 turns. So like first you draw 1, then you draw 2, then you draw 3. It's just awesome. So this is definitely like a build around because you need a lot of instant and sorceries. I know I haven't really been using the build around grade from limited resources, but this is really a build around, and I wouldn't play it otherwise because 9 mana is impossible in limited unless you're really flooding out. But then again, if you're really flooding out, you do want to draw more cards. So this card I think is kind of a build around, like I'd say it's a build around B. Yeah, build around B. And otherwise, if you have like 3 or 4 instant sorceries, it's sort of it's like a D minus. I wouldn't say F because you could get it out with only a few instant sorceries. So D minus or B build around. Next up, we got Mantle of, and this is one of the cycle of legendary artifacts. I think the green one is the best. When we get to that one, you'll know what I mean. So sorry. Okay, the next one is Mantle of Tides. It's a blue for an artifact equipment at common. Equipped creature gets +1/+2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, attach Mantle of Tides to target creature you control. Equip 3. So it's kind of a marginal blue boost, +1/+2, and it's another draw your second card payoff. So I imagine you can move this around fairly often because you'll be able to draw extra cards if you built your deck right. So I mean, +1/+2 is okay, and I would not want to equip this for 3 mana. That sounds awful, but you'll probably will never do that. You'll just leave it on your creature until you draw a second card. So this card's like alright. Definitely don't want like more than 1 of this ever in your deck. Although if you do have 2 of them, they do stack, so +2/+4, +3/+6. That is kind of appealing. I don't know, you could probably make it work. But another kind of build around, but this one is more like a D+ to a D. I would not want to put too many of these in my deck. But it could turn out that that the +1/+2 stacking, if you have multiple of these, could turn out pretty good. I'd like to try that deck, but we'll see. So I'll call it a D for Mantle of Tides. Then we have Merfolk Secret Keeper for a blue. It's another adventure card. The creature half is Merfolk Wizard at common. It's a 0/4 with flavor text. So it's a vanilla 0/4. for a blue. And then the sorcery half is Venture Deeper. For a blue, it's a sorcery adventure. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. Oh boy. So this card goes in the mill deck and nowhere else. You don't want to be milling them unless, you're just wasting a card. And then you have a 0/4, which does block everything, but does nothing else. Yeah, this card's not good. I wouldn't put this in my deck, ever, unless I'm going for that mill deck, because milling 4 is a lot. But I'm giving it an F, because you're not going to want to play this. Alright, the next card is Midnight Clock. For 2 and a blue, it's an artifact, at rare. Tap it, add a blue, pay 2 and a blue, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library. Then draw 7 cards, exile Midnight Clock. This is probably the memeiest card of this set, because everybody, everybody wants to make it work, but is it good? You could make it work. So the first turn you play it, you get a mana rock. Then you can pay 3 to put an hour counter on it if you want. But on your opponent's upkeep, they get the first hour counter. On your upkeep, you get the second. So if you never put an hour counter on it manually, you'll automatically get the 7 cards on your turn. Then you exile the Midnight Clock, which is kind of lame because maybe I want my mana rock, But then again, you have your 7 cards, and that is good. Drawing 7 cards is amazing. I do really like this card. If you want a mana rock, you got it. Yeah, it's kind of a hard card to evaluate. It's kind of a do-nothing artifact, which all it does is add you a blue. And it is a mana sink, so you can get there faster. But after 6 turns, drawing 7 cards, hopefully you've won by then, but yeah, you can get there with this card, I think. I'd probably call it a C, because you might just be dead before that, taking your turn 3 off to play a mana rock. I mean, you could do worse, but I'd just give this a C for Midnight Clock. Next up, we got Mirror Maid, 1 and 2 blue for an enchantment, at rare. You may have Mirror Maid enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. So this one I think is a sideboard card, specifically for when your opponent has a legendary artifact, then you get to copy their artifact and have a heck of a time. But there aren't that many artifacts or enchantments that you really want to copy. Maybe you want to copy a Charmed Sleep or something. This card is not great. I would not first pick it. But there are some fringe applications like that. So you probably don't want to be copying artifacts and enchantments in limited, but it's kind of hard to evaluate because I'm not sure about all the different artifacts and enchantments in this set. But taking your turn 3 off to play a copy artifact or enchantment, not great to me. So I think this is sort of a build around, but then again, what are you building? Enchantments? Artifacts? So if you have a sweet artifact or enchantment that you want to copy, there you go. But I'm going to leave this in the pack for that player that wants to play that. So I'm giving this an F. This doesn't help you win games of limited, so there you go. Next up, we got Mistford River Turtle, 3 and a blue for a 1/5 creature turtle at common. Whenever Mistford River Turtle attacks, another target attacking non-human creature can't be blocked this turn. So I guess the idea is he's ferrying the other non-human creature on his back to attack the opponent on the other side of the river. which the flavor is there, but a 1/5 for 4 is not where you want to be. It does block everything, but that's about it. And you don't want to really attack with a 1/5. The upside is really weird, but giving creatures unblockable, and this will likely survive since it has 5 toughness, so you can do it over and over again. That could be good. I think it says non-human, so all your knights that you want to play, they don't get unblockable. So it's got kind of a drawback there, but I don't know. Well, this card is not great, but if you do want a blocker, there you go. So I think I'm just giving this one a C for Mistford River Turtle. Next up, we got Moonlit Scavengers, 5 in a blue for a 4/5 Merfolk Rogue at common. When Moonlit Scavengers enters the battlefield, if you control an artifact or enchantment, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. This card is pretty bad. 6 mana for a 4/5. I want better stats than that for 6 mana. Usually in blue you don't get great stats for that, but still I want better than that. And you do get to bounce something, but you have to have an artifact or enchantment. And like I said, bouncing is really bad in this set because you're giving them their adventure back, which they probably want anyway. So, and it says if you control an artifact or enchantment, return. So it's not even you may return, you have to return. So if all they have is an adventure creature, you just give them their adventure back, which is pretty awful. So I'm off of this card. I don't like it. It's too much. Asks too much of you, gives too little, and the stuff that it does give you is not good. It's like, thanks, I hate it. So I'm going to give this a D. Yeah, and that's pretty much what it deserves. So next up, we got Mystical Dispute. 2 in a blue for an instant at uncommon. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a blue spell. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. So this is what I was talking about earlier when I said there's a better blue counter spell in the set. This is the better one, I think, because it could be 1 mana for a Mana Leak, which is amazing. Mana Leak is a really good card. For those of you who don't know, Mana Leak says for 1 in a blue, counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. This has the exact same text. But if you target a blue spell, this costs 1, which is really good for a counter spell. So I would probably sideboard this and only bring it in if you're in the blue matchup, but it's still not too bad. 3 mana to Mana Leak something isn't horrible. You could definitely do worse. The other one is a hard counter, but this one, like, you'll get them in the beginning of the game. So yeah, this one I'd give it a C, and then against blue decks it's probably a C+. Next up, we got Opt. Opt is back. For those of you who don't know, Opt is a blue mana for an instant at common. Scry 1, draw a card. So I like to call this card Jank Glue because it really holds those jank decks together for risky keeps and everything. Like Opt really helps with low land opening hands. So if you have like 2 lands and an Opt, I usually keep that hand. But if you have like 1 land and an Opt, it's close. You get to see 2 cards with Opt. So, but yeah, Opt is pretty good. It's usually cut it if you can't make room for it, but it's a pretty good 22nd, 23rd card. So yeah, Opt is Opt. I mean, you'll put it in your deck, and you might pull multiples too. So Opt, I think, is a C, and that's about as good as Opt gets. So there you go. Next, we got Overwhelmed Apprentice. For a blue, you have a creature human wizard at uncommon. It's a 1/2, and it says when Overwhelmed Apprentice enters the battlefield, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Then you scry 2. So this goes in the mill deck, but you also get the scry. They're making Omen Speaker even better nowadays. You got your Charming Prince that scries 2, and you got this one that scries 2 for 1 mana. 1 mana scry 2, like at the beginning of the game, is really powerful, I think. So I'm really high on Overwhelmed Apprentice. It mills them incidentally, which if you're in the mill deck, then here you go. But I wouldn't play this card for that. I'd play it for the scry and the decent body for 1 mana. It's got 2 toughness, so that's not nothing. But yeah, I'd probably give this card a C. You don't want too many of these, but then again, scrying 2 at the beginning of the game is really good. So there you go. And you got a chump blocker too. So C for Overwhelmed Apprentice. Next up, we got Queen of Ice, 2 and a blue for a adventure card. The creature half is Human Noble Wizard at common. When Queen of Ice deals combat damage to a creature, tap that creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Next, with the adventure half is Rage of Winter, 1 and a blue, sorcery adventure, tap target creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So this is another adventure that curves into itself. The adventure is 2 and the creature is 3, which I really like. Not enough people point that out, I think, but you can just, this is a curve filler by itself. So tapping something down, not letting it untap is really good. We just had Frostlinks in Core 2020, which was one of the best commons in the set. This card is even better than Frostlinks in my opinion, because you get the sorcery half, which freezes something, and then you get the combat damage trigger, which freezes stuff. Just really good. This card is also kind of a riff on Elsa from what's it called? Frozen, that Disney movie. But anyway, this card is really good, and I might even first pick this. I like it that much because the freeze is really good. For 3 mana, you get the 2/3 body, which is acceptable. And this card can really get you there. It just taps their stuff forever. It's really annoying in combat. If my opponent played this, I'd be really upset and be wanting to kill it right away. So I would play as many of these as you can get your hands on. So I'm giving this like a B- because I think it's just a really good creature. One of the best commons in the set for sure. Yeah. So next we got Run Away Together. 1 and a blue for an instant at common. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. Aha, so this is the bounce spell that bounces both your thing and their thing. So this gets you your adventure back, plus you bounce one of their things, hopefully without an adventure or whatever. So, well, I think bouncing is pretty bad in this set. This one lets you return your adventure card back, which I think is really good. If you can't tell, I love playing adventures. And being able to play them again once they're creatures is super cool. So this card lets you do that. But then again, you do have a tempo loss because you just bounced your creature. But it's only 2 mana, so you could do worse than that. And yeah, so I think this card's like a C, but you don't really want too many of these, but you do want it if you do have adventures. And yeah, so C for Run Away Together. Next up, we got Sage of the Falls. Sage of the Falls is for 4 and a blue. It's a creature, Merfolk Wizard, at uncommon. It's a 2/5. Okay. Whenever Sage of the Falls or another non-human creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So this kind of belongs in 2 different decks. It belongs in the non-human deck, and it belongs in the draw an additional card deck. This one lets you loot, so that's decent. But for 5 mana, you only get a 2/5. That's pretty bad. The 5 toughness is nice, but this does not tangle well in combat. Does not kill much. But looting is really good in limited because you get to fix your hand basically. and it's easy to trigger because you just need a non-human creature to enter the battlefield. Yeah, this card is decent. I'd probably give it a C minus. Like there are commons that are definitely I would take over this. So for 5 mana 2/5, just not stellar. But looting is good. So if looting is better in this set, like drawing cards is definitely better in this set than it usually is. So there you have that. So if you're in that deck, go for it. I'd probably play it mostly only in the draw extra cards deck for value, or draw your second card deck. Draw your second card deck. So if you're in that deck, go for it. If not, I'd probably pass. So I'm going to give this a C minus. Next up, we got So Tiny. For a blue, it's an enchantment aura. At common, has flash, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -2/-0. Gets -6/-0 instead, as long as its controller has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. So this is like another one of those reverse threshold cards where you want 7 cards in their graveyard, and you have less control over that because whenever you play a spell, it goes to your graveyard, but you don't have control over your opponent's deck unless you're in the mill deck. So if you're in the mill deck, this is good removal. If you're not in the mill deck, hopefully eventually they'll have 7 cards in their graveyard. -2/-0, you know, makes most creatures much less of a threat. -6/-0 definitely. So you do really want to get -6/-0. But then again, this is for just 1 blue. You make it's even a combat trick. So I don't know. This card could be really good. So I'm going to give this a I'll give it a C because it's decent removal. So C for So Tiny. Next up, we got Steel Gaze Griffin. It's a 5 mana 2/4 with flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So if you draw a second card, it's a 4/4 flyer for 5. So it's at baseline, it's a 2/4 for 5, which is pretty bad. So you really want to always have this triggered. Hopefully in your blue deck you can draw an additional card somehow. Then it's a 4/4 flyer, which is just air elemental. But this is an air elemental you have to work for, and you can only draw your second card once each turn. It's not like you can make this a 6/4. Yeah, it's just air elemental with some work involved. Better on offense, not as good on defense. Has 4 toughness, which is relevant, so there's that. Like it doesn't die to the 3 damage stuff. I think this card is like a C, maybe even a C minus, because how many 5 mana 2/4 flyers do you want in your deck? Not many. So I'm going C minus on Steel Gaze Griffin. Anyway, the next one is Stolen by the Fae. It's X blue for a sorcery. At rare, return target creature with converted mana cost X to its owner's hand. You create X 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying. So I love this card. The flavor is awesome. I love the art. There's like fairies stealing a guy. But this card is like the most frustrating card ever, because you're like, how often are they gonna have, like, let's say you have 7 mana. How often are they gonna have a 5-drop? Like exactly a 5-drop when you have 7 mana, which you can then bounce their thing and make 5 fairies. Because it doesn't say X or less, that you have to match the converted mana cost, plus pay 2 extra mana for the 2 blue. So, man, I really want this card to be good because I love it. I wish it was an instant. It's a sorcery though. Just all those things hold this back. But 1/1 blue fairies with flying are really good. They can always get in there, and they're good chump blockers for both flying and non-flying creatures. So when you put this all together, This is probably just a C, because it bounces their thing and you get some value off of it. But it's like, let's say they have a 3-drop, you have to pay 5 mana. If they have a 4-drop, you have to pay 6 mana, then you get 4 fairies. Yeah, this is a C. I do love this card though. I really want to make it work. So C for Stolen by the Fae. Definitely a pet card of mine. Alright, the next one we got Sir Eleonora the Discerning. 3 blue for a legendary creature human knight at uncommon. It's a star 4. Sir Eleonora the Discerning's power is equal to the number of cards in your hand. When Sir Eleonora enters the battlefield, draw a card. And spells your opponents cast that target Sir Eleonora cost 2 more to cast. So this card I think is pretty good. I think when you can play this by turn 5, you'll still have like 3 cards in your hand maybe. Plus this draws you a card, so maybe you'll have 4. So it's kind of like a 5-mana 4/4-ish. And then if you're in blue, so you've probably been drawing some cards. I mean, I would love for this to be 7 power all the time. Then that would be great. And it's kind of harder to kill because they have to pay 2 more. But if they don't kill this, like, this is just going to kill them. And what's kind of cool about this card is that it's a legendary creature at uncommon, which is good. So there's that. Yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty playable. So I'd probably give it a C+. I don't think I'd first pick it, but it is a pretty good card. So C+ for Sir Eleonora. Next up, we got Tome Raider. Not Tomb. Oh, you know what it's off. For 2 and a blue, it's a 1/1 creature fairy at common, flying. When Tome Raider enters the battlefield, draw a card. Yeah, I'm in. Draw a card for 3 mana with a 1/1 flyer. That's a pretty good card, I think. It's strictly worse than Cloud Conceer from Core Set 2020. But, that was a really good card. This one, it's got 1 less power. It's a 1/1. But it still draws you a card. And I think that's a pretty good card. It just replaces itself. You'll play these. I'll play a million of these throughout the limited. Can't wait to play it. One of my favorite commons in the set for sure. I just love creatures that give you value like that. That's really good. Plus, you would love to bounce this with Runaway Together. You just get to, with 5 mana, you can bounce it and then play it again. Draw another card. That sounds awesome. So this card is a C+, and I'm not going to first pick it, but I would be really happy having multiples of these in my deck. Next up, we got Turn Into a Pumpkin. For 3 and a blue, it's an instant at uncommon. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Draw a card. And it has Adamant, which is interesting. We've gotten this far into the color without having Adamant. So Adamant is if at least 3 blue mana was spent to cast this spell, create a food token. So Adamant is for whatever color the spell is. If you pay 3 of that color, you get a bonus effect, which is usually pretty minimal, but like here it's only a food token, but there could be other cool stuff like the next card here if you want to peek at that. So you get to bounce a non-land permanent and draw a card. I'm in. That's exactly what was that card called? From Dominaria. I can't think of it. But it let you bounce a card, bounce an online permanent, and then the kicker was you draw a card. So I can't think of the name of it right now. Blink of an Eye, that's what it was. Blink of an Eye, let you bounce a thing, and then kicker, draw a card. This one doesn't give you the option of playing it for 2 mana, but for 4 mana, you bounce a thing and you draw a card. Bounce isn't great in this set, like I said, but it can remove annoying stuff. So, like you can remove like bad enchantments and stuff like that, or like Charm Sleep and stuff like that. So, the Adamant, you get a food token. Blue really doesn't care about food tokens, but hey, I mean it's cool flavor for the card, and that's 3 free life, and it's an artifact that you can that counts for artifact stuff. So this is just like a C, but you know, you'd be pretty happy with having this in your deck. It says draw a card, which is always an upside. So C for turn into a pumpkin. Next up, we got Unexplained Vision. For 4 and a blue, it's a sorcery at common. Draw 3 cards, and Adamant, if at least 3 blue mana was spent to cast the spell, scry 3. So with the rulings with this card, whether you have Adamant or not, first you draw 3 cards, and then you scry 3. So you don't get to scry 3 and then draw 3 cards. It's draw 3 cards, then scry 3. Still amazing. This is a really good card. Draws 3 cards for you and fixes your next 3 draws, which is awesome. Gets rid of those excess lands from the top of your deck. Finds you your gas. This card, like, I imagine if you play this card on turn 5, your opponent is just SOL. Like, it's hard to lose after drawing 3 cards in limited, I think. So this card is really good. I don't know if I'd first pick it, but I'd give it a B- because drawing 3 cards and then scrying 3, really good. For a common too. I really like it. Plus the art is like a story moment. This is Rowan and Will looking into the magic mirror, like, hey, there's an elk. Wonder what's going on there. Rowan will exchange a baffled glance. Could the stag and the vision lead them to their father? I haven't read the novel yet, but I think that is their father. I don't know. Spoiler. That's just a guess. I don't know. So I'd give it a B- to Unexplained Vision. Looks awesome. Next up, we got Vantress Gargoyle. 1 and a blue for a artifact creature gargoyle at rare. It's a 5/4 for 2. Wow. It has flying. Can't attack unless defending player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. Okay. That's pretty bad downside, but Vantress Gargoyle can't block unless you have 4 or more cards in hand, and then tap, each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. Okay, so this is a mill payoff, plus it cares about how many cards are in your hand. So for attacking, it cares about their graveyard, and for blocking, it cares about how many cards are in your hand. And then you can mill them for 1, or you mill both of you for 1. This card, I really wanted to make it work. 5/4 flyer for 2 is amazing. If you can turbo mill them, like, go for it. I would love to see this do well in limited, but getting 7 cards in the graveyard is a big ask. You'll never get that turn 2. Like, that's impossible. So at minimum, you'll probably be able to attack with this by turn like 5 if you've really been milling them. Yeah, 5, turn 4 or 5. But then again, by turn 5, a 5/4 is still really good, especially if it has flying. So this card, it's kind of hard to evaluate, but I think this is a C+. Plus it's an artifact for when you care about artifacts. Hopefully this does well. I really do like this card. So it helps you mill them by putting the top card of their library into the graveyard, each player. But yeah, I'd say C+ for this one. If you can get 7 cards in the graveyard, they're just going to lose. Like, you're just beating them over the head with a 5/4. So I hope you can get there in limited. I'm sure as heck going to try. So the next one is Vantress Paladin. 3 and a blue for a creature, human, knight at common. It's 2/2. Flying. Has adamant. If at least 3 blue mana was spent to cast a spell, Vantress Paladin enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is the blue knight version. There's a cycle of knights that are all named after their castle. And this one is named after the Vantress one, the blue one. So 4 mana at baseline for a 2/2 is not very good at all. But 4 mana for a 3/3, if you can adamant it, is pretty good. I mean, a 4 mana 3/3 flyer is going to get you there eventually. So you really want to get the adamant on this. I'd play this mostly in blue decks, but yeah, you really want to get the adamant. So this one I'd probably give a C. It's never going to get better than that. 4-mana for a 3/3 is the ceiling, so that's pretty good. But 2/2 for 4, just not where you want to be. So yeah, but it's a knight, so if you got knight synergies, there's really no knight synergies in blue, but that's mostly in Mardu. But yeah, I could see sticking 1 or 2 of these in my deck if I'm more heavily blue. So C for Vantress Paladin. Next up we got Wishful Merfolk. We're almost done. 1 in a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk creature at common, has Defender, but you can pay 1 in a blue. Wishful Merfolk loses Defender and becomes a human until end of turn. So this is a riff on the Little Mermaid, of course. 3/2 for 2 is not bad. It's kind of like Molt Piranhas, which is a Defender 3/3 for 2, but this one can lose Defender and be a human. So for 2 mana, and there's probably better stuff to do for your two mana, or essentially 4 mana in limited. So you got to pump 4 mana into this before it can do anything. 2 mana to play it, 2 mana to make it lose Defender. Also, it turns into a human, which it can't even work with that turtle, which sucks. So just like loses a little bit of upside it had. But Wishful Merfolk, not excited to play this card. It's pretty bad. Block's pretty good on the ground, but I'd be pretty unexcited if I had multiples of these. So I really wouldn't run this card. So I'd probably give this like a D-, or maybe even an F. Yeah, I'd say D- because I could see you putting this in as a defensive creature. Yeah, so D- for Wishful Merfolk. And the last card, Witching Well, is 1 blue for an artifact at common. So a single blue. When Witching Well enters the battlefield, you scry 2. That's pretty good. Then for 3 in a blue, sack Witching Well, draw 2 cards. So this is a really cheap artifact for your blue artifact deck, which is pretty good. Let's just scry 2, which I love doing on turn 1. So I like that a lot. So like scrying 2 is kind of like drawing a card. I've heard scry 1 is like a half a card, so scry 2 is kind of like drawing a card. But this lets you keep like risky hands. If you have like 2 lands and you have a Wishing Well, assuming you have an island, I would consider keeping it, because scry 2 lets you find that extra land or put your non-lands to the bottom. And then late game, still good because you can scry 2. That's not bad. And then you can even pay 4 to draw 2 cards. So drawing cards in limited is awesome always, and this set more than most wants you to draw more cards because there's payoffs for drawing your second card each turn. So this one, doesn't matter which turn it is, you can still get the payoff because it draws you 2, which is good. So I really do like Witching Well. Could see myself playing 1 of these, maybe 2, if I'm feeling saucy or spicy. But pretty cool art. I like the flavor. There's like a monster in the background. Like there's a witch as well here. So that's Witching Well. I'd probably give it a C. Not great, but for 5 mana you can scry 2 and then draw 2 cards, so that's not bad. And you can even split it up. You know, 1 turn you play the 1 drop and then pay 4 later, which is always good. I like my 1 drops to have value later in the game, which is awesome. Plus it's an artifact, of course, for all those artifact payoffs. It stacks itself so you can get it back with Emery if you choose to run that. So yeah, there's a lot of upside. So yeah, C for Witching Well. Alright, that kind of wraps up the blue portion of this set review. Thanks for watching, you guys. I've received some of your feedback. I've heard that you don't like the audio very much. Not much I can do about that right now, but hopefully if I do decide to do more content, I'll get a microphone. And yeah, thanks a lot for your feedback, guys. Yeah, so that's it for the blue set review. I'll try to do the black set review within the next few days. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.